works. Today we have a problem solving class based on Cournot. So I have chosen 3 books. The first one is Snyder 11th edition, then Perloff, and then Pindyck. So we are going to solve one problem from each of these 3 books. 3 problems which belong to 3 different standards and 3 different aspects of Cournot model. Okay. Now we are going to start with Snyder. So Snyder 11th edition, the problem is 15.3, which is the chapter 15 and third problem. So if you have the book, you can just open it up. And if you don't have the book, then I'll suggest you write it down. So I'm just going to read it aloud. But before that, just to mention, all the problems or the questions of Snyder are at least of this size. Okay, so other problems are even bigger than that. And because of that, Snyder's exercise serves a good basic ground for ISI subjective questions, which are difficult obviously to answer, but the first basic level is that you learn to handle problems of ISI, problems of this size, which belongs to ISI subjective. Now don't get the idea that ISI picks up questions from Snyder or something. That's not true at all. Okay, but this can be a starting ground. So we have what we call a differentiated cost model, right? So we talked about same cost in the standard model. We derived that using calculus in the last class. If you are not familiar with that, then please go back and check, because we are going to follow the same mathematics here. Okay. Anyway, so we have a differentiated cost model, that is, let CI be the constant marginal and average cost for farm I. Alright, MC and AC. Suppose demand is given by P equal to 1 minus Q. Our first question is calculate the Nash equilibrium quantities, that is the equilibrium quantity, assuming there are 2 farms in a Cournot model. Also compute market output, market price, farm profits, industry profits, consumer surplus, and total welfare. Now this is a long list, but obviously once you got the equilibrium quantities, rest of it is pretty easy. B, which is as a problem of my prime interest, represent the Nash equilibrium on a best response function diagram, something that we have done in the first class itself. Show how a reduction in farm 1's cost would change this equilibrium. Draw a representative isoprofit for farm 1. So if you are familiar with the earlier 2 classes on Cournot, this is an easy problem. The only thing is it is lengthy. Now I always say that when you have a lengthy problem, what do? You make a list of what you have to compute, so that you don't have to, look back to the problem time and again. Right? Although we have not shown really how the equilibrium of Cournot model that we derived becomes also the Nash equilibrium, but given that knowledge that Nash equilibrium of this model is basically the equilibrium we derived, we are going to solve the problem. Okay. Now it said, so let's start with the solution. Okay. So there are 2 farms, which basically means our I is 1, 2. Okay. And just to say CI is constant MC and AC. Okay. Demand function is P equal to 1 minus Q, where Q equal to obviously Q1 plus Q2. So our first task is Nash equilibrium quantity. Okay. So Nash equilibrium quantities. So our first task is to construct the profit function pi1 of q1 comma q2, which is p into q1 to small c minus small c into q1, right? Now, this can also be written as this, p minus c into q1. This is not a structure that we generally follow while profit maximizing, but if you open Perloff, which is also the MIT recommended textbook, you will see that Perloff has kind of used this structure time and again. Okay. Anyways, so this is equal to 1 minus q1 minus q2 q1. So rest of it is from the last class. So our task is to maximize this against q1, and the FOC here is del pi 1 del q1 equal to 0, which if we calculate will be 1 minus 2q1 minus q2 minus c1 equal to 0, which then will be 2q1 plus q2 equal to 1 minus c1. So this is, from our earlier knowledge, this is the reaction function. And as I said, that if we follow game theory, then under Nash equilibrium, this becomes my best response function. So this is best response function. We can write it to BR1 because it is a form 1. Then we are going to do something that we have done earlier also. That is, we are going to use symmetry. If you are not convinced, you can calculate for yourself and see that indeed this is the result. So by symmetry, 1 and 2 will interchange. So 2q2 plus q1 equal to 1 minus c2. So this is my best response function for form 2. It will be used again, obviously, while we will be solving part B of this question. Okay. So rest of it is pretty easy. Cournot equilibrium is the intersection point. So we'll find the intersection of these two guys. And if we do that, we'll see that q1 star is equal to 1 minus 2c1 plus c2 by 3. And again, by symmetry, q2 star will be 1 minus 2c2 plus c1 by 3. Now, if you are answering your honors paper, I will say this is not the right way to do it, in the sense that although this is true, although it is mathematically quite tractable, but you cannot just write like this. Okay. In university exams, they are not they're not allowed somehow. But as I said, if you are facing some entrance kind of an exam, then obviously you can solve like that. Okay. All right. Now this is just back checking. Okay. So there is just a back checking. Remember, we considered identical cost in our model. So in our model, identical cost, which implies C1 equal to C2. So if we put that, and we had A instead of 1, so C1 equal to C2 and 1 equal to A. This is according to the model we considered in our theory class. Okay. So if I put that, then our Q1 star becomes 1, becomes A, both are C, so minus C by 3, which is also Q2 star. So that means it matches with the equilibrium output that we got in our earlier class. So we have solved the problem correctly. So this is a very easy way of back checking that your calculation is indeed correct. Now, if these are the Nash equilibrium quantities, so any quantities here are Q1 star 1 minus 2C1 plus C2 divided by 3. Q2 star 1 minus 2C2 plus C1 by 3. Then industry output, so there are only two firms, right? Or market output, whatever. So that will be Q star, which is Q1 star plus Q2 star. So if we add them up, they will be 2 minus C1 minus C2 divided by 3. Then comes firm profits. So firm profits. So I'll just write firm 1. So what is the profit function here? Pi 1 equal to P minus C into Q1, right? This is the expression. And if I write the optimal value P star obtained from the demand function, or if you prefer, if we write like this, 1 minus Q star minus C into Q1 star, right? So this will be pi 1 star. Yeah, our notation is good, right? These are optimal values, so we are putting star into it. That's it. So if you calculate, it will be 1 minus 2C1 plus C2 by 3 whole square. Okay. And as you know, that if this is the profit of firm 1, then by symmetry for firm 2, you just exchange the notation or alternate the notation. So pi 2 star will be 1 minus 2C2 plus C1 by 3 whole square. Okay, so it is this easy. If you are if you are comfortable and easy with using this idea of symmetry, often the problem of the size of the problem based on Cournot model, it gets reduced to half. Okay, only if you can intelligently use the idea of symmetry. Okay, so these two are our firm profits. So industry profit is just a sum of that, so I'm not going to really calculate that. I'll just write the formula so that if you are interested, you can calculate. Okay, so industry profit pi star is equal to pi 1 plus pi 2, these stars. Then comes consumer surplus. Consumer surplus. So for that, we are going to use the formula involving integration. So CS star, so to say, will be integration 0 to Q star. That's why industry output or market output is needed. 1 minus T dt. Since we have used Q here, we cannot actually write 1 minus Q dq here. Okay, minus P into Q. Remember this, do not write Q here as you have written already Q star or Q here. If you do that, this integration will be meaningless. Okay, even if you are correct in calculating, the integration will be meaningless and you will get 0. Okay, so we know our Q star, so it will be integration 0 to 2 minus C1 minus C2 divided by 3, 1 minus T dt minus P star Q star. So we know all that equilibrium values. Now again, I am not really going to calculate, but if you calculate it, then it will be 1 by 6 C1 square minus C2 square minus 2C2 minus 2. Okay, so you can guess, the calculation involved behind all of this, so we are not really interested in that. Then comes, I think, the total welfare. Okay, so total welfare here is obviously consumer surplus and producer surplus. So you have your consumer surplus here. What you need is the producer surplus. So how to get that? Remember, here you don't have the supply curve, because apart from perfect competition, no market actually comes with the supply curve, right? Neither monopoly nor oligopoly. So you have to calculate it in a different way, right? So you get the P star, Q star, and you have the revenue, and then the marginal cost will become the downward limit. So basically you get revenue minus cost for the quantities available, and you get the producer surplus for each of the farms separately, because their costs are different. So each of the farms separately, add them, you get the total welfare. Okay, I'm not going to calculate because again it will be a lengthy calculation. And in a problem of Cournot model, we are more interested in the things that we derive, that is quantities, our main concern, and then if not profit, then consumer surplus definitely, because we are dealing with imperfect competition. Okay, so now we will move on to the B part of the question, because as I said, our prime interest is that it's an interesting question, something that is slightly difficult. Okay, so our question was that so we have a scenario. First of all, we have a scenario. The scenario is reduction in farm 1's MC. So we have a scenario like this, and we are going to find the effect of this in best response. Okay, so our first task, given this is the best response function of farm 1, so 2q1 plus 2q2 is 1 minus c1, and for farm 2 it is 2q2 plus q1 equal to 1 minus c2. Our first task is to draw the diagram, right? And obviously if you are familiar with the first class that I have taken then of Cournot model, then you know this diagram, right? So q1, q2, two straight lines. For us, since we have this reduction in farm 1 scenario, we are going to keep certain gap here. Okay, so 1 minus c1 here, right? For q1 0, q2 is 1 minus c1. Okay, so we are mapping the first one, and then if this is 1 minus c1, so this is half. So let's say here, let's say here is our 1 minus c1 by 2. Okay, so this here is our best response 1. Okay, now best response 2. So let's say this is let me just draw it casually, right? So this is, let's say, 1 minus c2 by 2, this point. So this is the thing. Then yeah, somewhere here will be 1 minus c2. So okay, so this is my best response 2. Okay, 1 minus c2. Okay, so we know that the initial equilibrium, the equilibrium that we just calculated, it is E star, and this is Q1 star, and this is Q2 star, right? Okay, so this is the thing, we know that. Now, if C1 decreased, Okay. If C1 decreased, then obviously 1 minus C1 increased and 1 minus C1 by 2 both increased. So we are looking at a rightward shift. So the best response 1 will shift rightward. So the best response 1 will shift rightward. So let's say these are the 2 points. Okay. So let's say these are the 2 points. Okay. Okay. Good. So this is my new BR1 dash, which represents the lower cost. Alright. So where is the equilibrium now? The equilibrium now is this my Q1 double star, and this here will be Q2 double star. So E double star. So what you see is so how does the equilibrium change? Because that is our question. So our answer is that in the new Nash equilibrium, because these are best response functions, so in the new Nash equilibrium, the equilibrium output of farm 1 is increased and of farm 2 is decreased. Okay. Now the last thing is draw a representative isoprofit curve for farm 1. So we know that isoprofit curves will have their optimal points on this best response function, right? So if you have to draw a representative isoprofit curve, then we will have one for E star. So it will go like, okay, let's see, I will use a different color just to, so it will go like this. Remember that isoprofit curves are, for Q1, the isoprofit curves are concave to the axis of farm 1, right? Remember what we studied in the first class. So the isoprofit curve will look like this. Okay. And for this one also, we have to draw one which will go like this. Okay. One easy way of getting the correct isoprofit curve is obviously that the optimal will be on this E star, right? And another thing to look out is that the leftward portion will be shorter and there will be a tail on the right side. So if you draw like that, it will automatically become, a representative isoprofit curve of farm 1. Okay. So here we finish the first problem that is coming from Snyder. It was a long problem. We broke it down in several parts so that we can solve it easily. The question was not really difficult. The only thing is size. And as I said, that if you are trying to solve ISI subjective problems, this is a good start, because the first thing that we have to know is how to handle the size. Otherwise, as you can see, the problem is pretty simple. We have used both our knowledge of calculus coming from the second class and the best response diagram which we learned in the first class. Okay. Thank you. Welcome back to the second problem of today. As I said that we have done one problem from Snyder, and the next one, this one, is from Perloff. The book is Microeconomics with Calculus, 3rd edition. And in Perloff, Oligopoly is in chapter 14. We have taken question number 3.13. Okay, so this problem is different. It is asking to find us the collusive equilibrium, as you can see here, the collusive equilibrium apart from the Nash-Cournot. Okay, so let me again read it out. A duopoly faces an inverse demand function of P equal to 120 minus Q. So instead of 1, we have 120 now. Firm 1 has a constant MC of 20 and firm 2 has a constant MC of 40. Calculate the output of each firm, market output and price if there is a collusive equilibrium or B, Nash-Cournot equilibrium. Now, up till this point, MC of 40 and output, we can think of this as a numeric problem of the earlier one. But the question here is to find the collusive equilibrium. We, as we know the theory of the Cournot model, we will try to proceed a little bit further. Our search is, first, is the collusive equilibrium better for the firms than the Nash-Cournot? That is, whether the profit is higher or not. And the central question of this whole game is that, can I have this collusion stable? Okay, because this is the central thing. So we are going to find if there is any way whereby we can see a collusion which generates better profit but also comes with a stable situation, that is, it can be maintained. Okay, so let's just first solve the collusive equilibrium. All right. So our demand curve is P equal to 120 minus Q, and our MC1 is 20, MC2 is 40. Now, in general, collusion basically implies a problem of multi-plant monopolist, a problem of multi-plant monopolist. So if there are two firms, we are going to imagine that as a single firm which has options of two plants, right? So multi-plant monopolist. Now, the equilibrium condition for a multi-plant monopolist is, the equilibrium condition is MR equal to MC1 equal to MC2. Okay. Now here is the catch. The catch is that if I look at the MC, then the MC1 is 20 and MC2 is equal to 40. That is, here not only we have MC1 not equal to MC2 at all Q, but we have MC1 strictly less than MC2, which means that there is no way that the monopolist is going to use firm 2. Why? Because for every level of output, firm 2 will give us only more cost, that is, only lesser profit. So whatever output is going to be produced, it will be produced in firm 1, that is the plant 1 now. Okay. Now here is a catch. Again, another catch. The catch is that this situation that we just derived, that all the output is going to be produced at plant 1 with MC1 equal to 20. This situation can be changed by something called capacity constraint. Okay, something called capacity constraint. Once in Delhi school, a problem was there which was based on this inequality of MC and also a capacity constraint. If there is capacity constraint, then this sentence that we have written, this sentence we do not know for sure whether we can write this or not. The idea of capacity constraint goes like this. Take this farm who will be produced at MC1 equal to 20. Now, there is an unbreakable law in production, and the law is, or in market, the law is that the farm must serve the demand generated at the optimal point. So there is no way that the farm can fail that. Okay, now if the farm fails that, then we are looking for another farm. All right, so capacity constraint works in that direction, that if this farm generates a demand by producing at plant 1, okay, generates a demand which this farm itself fails to serve, in that case there will be production in second farm with MC2 equal to 40. But here there is no capacity constraint, so all the output is going to be produced at plant 1 with MC equal to 20, as we will just add it as there is no capacity constraint. Capacity constraint. Okay, so that means basically we are looking at a very simple monopoly problem. So let's just solve it. Okay. So easy profit function, or we can directly work out as MR equal to MC. But anyways, let's just write. So maximize profit Q, maximize profit Q equal to maximize profit Q equal to 120 minus Q into Q minus 20. Let's just say Q. There is no advantage in writing Q1 now, right? So this is my profit function subject to Q. So equilibrium condition is MR equal to MC, and if we do that, then just 120 minus 2Q equal to 20, which will make Q star as 50, P star equal to 70, because there is only one farm now, and the associated profit is pi star equal to 2500. Now we are going to write this because in the next problem this is going to be quite handy. Alright, so now you see that since there is no capacity constraint, the farm will be able to produce 50. If there is a constraint that the farm cannot go beyond 40, then the problem would have been very different with plant 2 producing. Okay. Alright, so this is our monopoly outcome. So the output, just remember, the output is 50, price is 70, and the profit is 2500. So before we go into the Nash Cournot, I'll just write it here. Pi star is equal to 2500. Okay. Now, what about the Nash Cournot? It's pretty simple. So, problem of farm 1 is pi 1, so Q1 comma Q2. This one will be 120 minus Q1 minus Q2 into Q1 minus 20 Q1, right? You have seen the first problem, so this will be a cakewalk. So then it will be 120 minus 2 Q1, okay, minus 2 Q1, let's write like this, minus Q2 minus 20 equal to 0, which will be 2 Q1 plus Q2 equal to 100. Now, if we use symmetry again, a little bit intelligently, because in case of farm 2, this 20 will be replaced by 40. So we can write by symmetry 2 Q2 plus Q1 equal to, so 120 minus 40, so that will be 80, right? That will be 80. So this one here is the best response of farm 1, and the next one is best response of farm 2. And we know that in a Cournot equilibrium, we just have to find the intersection point, which is a school level problem. So, if I simultaneously solve best response 1 and 2, so simultaneously solving best response 1 and best response 2. Q1 star is 40, Q2 star is 20, and now the price is 120 minus sum of these two, so 60, which is 60, and we also need the profit to solve the extra question that whether our collusion will work or not. So pi 1 star will be 1600 and pi 2 star will be 400. So if I talk about the industry profit, then pi 1 star plus pi 2 star is 2000. So this is where we see what we discussed very briefly in the very first class, that the joint profit is not maximized when firms are playing Nash-Cournot, right? So the joint profit is not maximized when the firms are playing Nash-Cournot. So the Nash-Cournot equilibrium outputs are Q1 star equal to 40 and Q2 star equal to 20, right? And we see that the joint profit is not maximized. Now, we asked whether we can make this collusion stable. What is the collusion profit? The collusion profit is pi star equal to 2500. So indeed, pi star C, if I say, is greater than pi star Cournot. Let me write like that, right? This is collusion and this is Cournot. Okay. Anyways, so this is what we have. Now, remember, in the collusion, firm 2 is not producing anything, which means that technically speaking, firm 2 doesn't have a profit also, or have a profit of 0, because everything is produced by firm 1. But in the Nash-Cournot case, firm 2 is not only producing but enjoying a profit of 400. Now, the excess profit in collusion is rupees 500, and this is strictly greater than pi 2 star in Cournot, right? So firm 1 can just take this rupees 500 and offer a share of profit to firm 2, a share which is obviously more than 400, right? So 401 or any epsilon more than 400, anything more than 400, and make an agreement that in collusion, firm 1 will produce in the plant 1 only at the monopoly level of output, and it will give a profit share of something more than 400 to firm 2. So if firm 1 makes such an offer, then this collusion can happily work. Okay? Thank you. Hello and welcome to the third problem of the day. So this one, our third problem, is from Pindyck. Rubinfeld is one of my favorite textbook to solve problems from. So this problem is coming from chapter 11, that is the chapter of Oligopoly. I am using 6th edition. It's an old book. Maybe you have the new book where the chapter number, I think, will vary. Okay. Before we read out the problem, just to mention, the first problem that we did was based on the change in reaction function, and by that the change in the equilibrium. The second problem from Perloff, there we explored the idea of collusive equilibrium, and as an extension we also looked at when and how a collusive equilibrium can be stable. Okay, now here we are, it's another kind of a problem, so let us read it out. It's question number 5 from the book. Two firms compete in selling identical goods. So it is the Cournot model that we studied in the first class. they choose their output levels Q1 and Q2 simultaneously. This is the word simultaneously, and that they are choosing quantity makes it a Cournot model. Okay, because in your exam they will not obviously directly write that apply Cournot model or something. You have to identify the problem, right? So simultaneously and quantity, that identifies, okay, this is a Cournot model. And face the demand curve P equal to 30 minus Q, where Q is equal to Q1 plus Q2. Until recently, both farms had zero marginal costs. Recent environmental regulations have increased farm 2's MC to rupees 15. So earlier scenario was MC 0 for both. Now farm 2's MC rupees 15, farm 1's MC remains constant at 0. So MC of one farm actually increased. Now there is a statement, true or false, we have to comment on that. That because of this, as a result, the market price will rise to the monopoly level, right? Now here when we are talking about monopoly level, we are not looking at a multi-plant monopolist which occurs in a collusive equilibrium. Let us be very clear on that, because that was our second problem. So here in the third problem, by this statement, as a result the market price will rise to the monopoly level, we are actually exploring whether, given this higher cost, farm 2 can stay in the market or not. And if it doesn't stay, then what is the resulting market equilibrium for farm 1? Who will become the monopolist? And as we are dealing with a game theoretic scenario, in the end we will explore whether the monopoly position of this farm 1 will stay or not, because as you can understand that the monopoly price and quantity will be very different from the oligopoly situation. Okay, now one trick or one hack of solving this problem is we are not solving the equilibrium with zero marginal cost. Okay, we are not interested in that. So we will directly start with MC rupees 15. So as we do, first in the solution, we are going to write the basic things. For example, we have identical goods. Along with that, our inverse demand curve P equal to 30 minus Q, with Q equal to Q1 plus Q2. MC2 or small c2 is 15 and MC1 small c1 is 0. So we are starting the problem after the regulation has been in effect. Okay, now let's write it as a rule. Obviously you will not write this when actually solving the problem. So it will lead to monopoly. So when it will lead to monopoly? It will lead to monopoly only if the high cost farm, so for us it is farm 2, high cost farm cannot stay in the market. So this is what we have to check. Alright, so now we will find the equilibrium, so we can erase the question, because now you don't have to look into the problem at all. Okay, so by this time we are quite sort of expert in finding these equilibriums. So we are majorly interested in farm 2, but anyways, to solve Cournot we need reaction function of both the farms. So the problem of farm, let's start with 2. Farm 2 is, so pi 2 is equal to price, that is this. So 30 minus Q1 minus Q2 into Q2 minus 15. So 15 Q2. Okay. Now the FOC implies del pi 2 del Q2 equal to 0, which is 30 minus Q1 minus 2Q2 equal to 15, which again implies that Q1 plus 2Q2 equal to 15. So this is the reaction function of farm 2. Similarly, pi 1, okay, here we have written problem of farm 2. So we have to write actually here maximize pi 2 against Q2. We have to add that. Okay, I just have to mention you have to add that because you started writing like this. Anyway, so similarly pi 1 is equal to 30. Everything is same except here it will be multiplied by Q1 and minus, well, the MC is 0, so there is 0, which implies that del pi 1 del Q1 equal to 0 implies 2Q1 plus Q2 equal to 30. So this one is reaction function of farm 1. Now our job is to solve simultaneously these two reaction functions, so that you can do by yourself, right? But I will just write these calculations small list that if you proceed, you'll find that let me directly write 4Q2 plus 2Q1, that is, we have multiplied 2 with reaction function of farm 2, so minus 2Q1 minus Q2 equal to 0, okay, which implies that 3, okay, these are capital letters, right? So for Q2, 2Q1, Q1, Q2, yeah. Anyways, these are also capital letters. Yeah. Okay, so 3Q2 is 0, which means Q2 star equal to 0. So optimally Q2 star is 0. That means in the Cournot game, in the equilibrium, the second farm will not produce anything, right? So that actually tells us that it will result in monopoly because farm 2 will not find it profitable to produce, or rather it will find it profitable not to produce. Now just to complete the answer, so Q1 star will be 15 and P star equal to 15. Okay, so in the Cournot equilibrium, the optimal for farm 2 is not to produce. Now here is the catch. The catch is, we understand that in the Cournot the farm 2 will not produce. But will that lead to monopoly of farm 1? That's a very different question. Why? Because the monopoly equilibrium will not be price equal to 15 and quantity equal to 15. That is not the monopoly equilibrium. From the experience of the second problem, we know that the monopoly solution will come up with a different quantity and different price. And that equilibrium has to be sustainable. Okay, so that is a very different question. So to check, we are going to solve now the monopoly equilibrium with only farm 1. And I will solve it in a very small way. So if farm 1 becomes the, if farm 1 becomes the monopolist, then, so directly I will calculate MR equal to MC. So MR will be 30 minus 2Q, and MC, as we know, MC is 0, right? Because it's the first form. So if that is true, then Q star is equal to 15, and P star obviously then is 50. Now, by doing this small problem solving, what we just observed is that this monopoly equilibrium is identical to this Cournot equilibrium that we will observe. So now we can write that it is true that the final statement we have to write. So it is true that the market price will rise to monopoly level. Okay, will rise to monopoly level. That is, basically, if you solve the Cournot, you will get the same price, but at this price quantity combination, since farm 2 is not producing, that means in the market the only player that remains is farm 1, and if farm 1 is the only player, then obviously we are looking at a monopoly. But remember, this cross check is essential so that you can give a very definite answer, okay, because that is very, very important. Had this price been higher than 15, we would have had a room where farm 2 at least can try to enter, which would have resulted in a very different situation. So to check that, we have just completed it. Okay, so by solving this, we end our problem solving class, where we solved 3 different kind of problems of 3 different levels from 3 different books. Later in the next class, we will move on to the game theoretic interpretation and one of the most important result of Cournot, which is how Cournot leads to perfect competition when the number of farms increases. We will solve the result in a theoretical manner, and after that we will also solve a problem, because in the case of n farms, solving or finding this reaction function, it has a very different trick compared to the method that we are following now. Okay, thank you.